dancing on the beat.
Coming to you live from the Mistopheles Studios, it's Dark Fringe Radio. And what's up, everybody? Thanks for coming down Dark Fringe Radio. I am your host, Will Martinez, and I appreciate you guys joining on the podcast live on Facebook. And please tell everybody about the podcast if you can. Tell them they can follow us on Facebook at Dark Fringe Radio. Very simple. And hopefully everybody's able to do that and spread the word. And I also have my co-host on the line with me tonight, Jay. Jay, what's going on, man?
What up? Long time, finally back in the fold. Got things running proper. My voice is finally back. I am ready to do this.
Yeah, you had some voice issues, right, man?
I did. I had laryngitis for 2 weeks, and I couldn't seem to just shake it. It took me getting some serious antibiotics and taking a few days rest and recoup.
Right.
But I'm almost back to 100%.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, I'm glad to have you back on, man. And we have a lot to talk about, man. And we're going to be talking about this crazy cult thing, this leader called Brother 12. And he's kind of like one of the OG original gangster cult leaders of, back then. And we'll be talking about that. But I wanted to get into the social media first here and talk about that as well. How you can follow us on Dark Fringe Radio. There's a couple different ways. Facebook, of course. You can follow us also on Twitter and also on Instagram. And you just follow us at Dark Fringe Radio. You can see that on the screen there to the right. Just follow us, Dark Fringe Radio, on any of those three platforms. And we're also on SoundCloud, so you can subscribe to us on SoundCloud. When we drop a live episode about a day or two later, the episode's available for download on SoundCloud as well, and also iTunes and Google Music. So a lot of different ways that you can actually listen to us and follow us. Just like I said, iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud. All those three platforms are available for you guys to use. So yeah, Jay, it's been a while since we've been on a podcast together. It's been a little bit of a delay and gap of time. Thanks for coming back on. And tonight I wanted to kind of jump in head first and talk about some horror movies because it's about that time of the season. Halloween's right around the corner. And literally right around the corner. And I like to kind of highlight the movies that are actually streaming on Netflix currently right now, and so I want to kind of go through that list of what's popping on there. So just give me a second here. I'm going to pop up my list.
Well,
go ahead.
Before we do that, or while you pop up that list, I
Please.
would like to make a little bit of a clarification. Last week, for a 1-year anniversary, and I was on the comments because the only way I could communicate was via type. We were talking about somebody brought up some haunted show, and you guys were talking kind of a little bit about Chernobyl.
Yeah.
And I realized that my comment wasn't clear on what I was bringing up. A show called The Mysteries of the Abandoned did an episode on a village outside of Chernobyl, and that's what it made me think of. And it's a great show, but it really shows some of the eerie, darker sides of what's left in the wake of that event. So when I was talking about Mysteries of the Abandoned, that's what I was talking about. Just to clarify, if you guys ever get a chance to go watch it, it's a great show. It is definitely creepy and eerie as fuck to see some of these dilapidated, forgotten, abandoned military bases or buildings. They have entire towns at times. They have even weird experimental Tesla coils out in the middle of Russia somewhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just out in the middle of
Russia. They do a
Russia,
lot of cool shit. It's fun. And they go it's cool because they go in the whole background of it, and it's great. But they did something on Chernobyl, and when you guys were talking about ghost hunters at Chernobyl, that's what I was talking about. Just for clarification.
Gotcha. No, that's awesome. And which channel is that being shown on? Do you know?
That I believe is on the Discovery Channel.
Discovery Channel. Okay. Cool, man. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for the clarification, man. And I'm definitely still going to check that out. And I think we were talking about that movie, the Chernobyl Diaries, and that's about that group of people who go back to Chernobyl and kind of go poking around and end up finding like mutant animals and shit happening there. But yeah, nonetheless, it was a good movie. But yeah, I wanted to talk about some of the movies that are actually going to be popping up on Netflix this month, and it's a pretty good list. Just wanted to kind of browse through that real quick, and as I'm bringing up that list, I wanted to remind everybody that you can send us any kind of correspondence to the show at thedarkfringe@gmail.com. Again, that's thedarkfringe@gmail.com. So if you have any show suggestions, you'd like to see if you want to be a guest on the show, please shoot us an email there. And we can go ahead and consider that on. So, first movie I wanted to talk about tonight, Jay, that's available on Netflix is the movie Evolution. And I'm not sure if you've heard about this movie, Evolution, but this is a pretty interesting story because the premise of the movie is a little bit different than what you would normally think. It's basically at an island where this movie takes place, where there's two groups of people, young boys and the women that oversee them, and it's like kind of like a really eerie setting, and it really gets really creepy after the main kid, Nicholas. He's the young boy. He sees a body swimming in the ocean, and then his mother dives in to investigate, but she doesn't find anything. So they're kind of like wondering what's up with this story that Nicholas had, and maybe that he was like seeing things. So she took him to the hospital, and for this like mysterious operation, and then things start to get really like paranoid, and a lot of panic starts to set in. And so you kind of figure out what's actually happening here in the background once this, domino of effects or events start happening, the actual movie starts to unfold. So a really, really cool movie. I actually watched it a couple weeks ago called Evolution. I would definitely recommend anybody to go ahead and check that one out. I don't know. Have you seen that one, Jay? Evolution?
I've seen of it. I've seen some of the trailers. I have yet to actually watch it.
Okay, yeah, definitely check it out. I definitely recommend for you and Rachel to check that out. You guys will like it. Another one I wanted to talk about was another movie called Under the Shadow, and just a pretty intense movie. It's a different type of movie in the way that has just an all kind of female cast, and in that vein that it's just kind of like the women are constantly feeling like they're always like in panic and in danger. So like it's about a mother and a daughter, and there's these series of events that happen where they end up by themselves in this building because their building is actually being bombed, and it's set in Iran, and it's really cool because you don't really have like a horror movie that's set in a different country like that. It's usually set in America or maybe England at the latest. But yeah, it's set in a different country, and it gives a really different type of feel of horror. And it's panic, and the woman that plays the main character in there is really, really good. So again, it's called Under the Shadow. Definitely recommend for you guys to check that out. Jay, have you seen any good movies lately?
Nothing new. Everything I've been watching lately, it's just been so crazy with me at work. The only thing I've really been watching that's kind of new is a TV show called Wrecked.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What is that about?
Fucking hilarious. So, well, it starts off season one. You have this airplane flying, and it kind of looks like it's going to focus around this guy, Danny. Heavier guy, beard. Airplane goes down, and they land on this deserted island. So they start kind of picking up some of the characters, like the main stewardess, Owen, or steward, steward, Owen. They have a couple of females. They have this weird guy from South Africa named Steve. And as they land, they start trying to figure out how they're going to survive on this island. Now, nobody there has any kind of survival training except for this one Green Beret. And I'm not going to spoil her, but he doesn't make it to episode 2.
Oh boy. Well, that's quite
because that would be too easy.
That'd be too easy, right?
Yep. So, season 1, they're trying to figure out how they're going to survive on this island. There's some division. They're trying to figure out who's going to be the leader. They eventually think they're going to be saved when they see this cruise ship just offshore. Turns out the cruise ship is full of pirates.
Ah.
So the pirates can take over the island.
Right.
Eventually they revolt. They get on the cruise ship, and now they think they're home safe.
Ah, there you go. There's the twist, of
But
course, right?
but then something goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to be as vague as possible because this is something this is a show everybody should watch.
Be vague.
And they end up on another island, deserted but not totally deserted, and they're kind of caught up in like a Hunger Games kind of thing.
Ah, pretty interesting.
It's fucking hilarious. It is hilarious. So that's kind of what's been taking up a majority of my open available TV time. That and the UFC fights that have been going on lately.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, another movie that's on Netflix is called Boys in the Trees, and this one's actually a pretty interesting film. And actually, it's about a group of kids, and there's like these boys that live in this area where it's not normal. Just let's say, without giving too much away in the plot. They kind of go through this journey in this strange kind of like parallel universe world that they live in. And on Halloween night, what happens is one of the main kids was friends with another kid, right? And on Halloween night, he basically tells his friend he takes off on him. He basically ghosts his friend on Halloween night and ends up hanging out with the cool kids. And then what happens is after that, he lures him to a freaking graveyard, and I really can't give the rest of the film what happens after that because I would give it away completely. But yeah, it's a really good film. It's called Boys in the Trees. So that's also on Netflix, so check that one out. Let me see what else is on the list here. Let's see. Oh yeah, the movie called Double X, and it's a
what?
Yeah.
Yeah, not Triple X.
No.
Triple X, you're either going to find pornography or a really bad Vin Diesel movie.
Yeah, no. It's called Double X, and it's a anthology series, meaning that it's a basically kind of like in a vein of if you could imagine Creepshow, like Creepshow 1 and Creepshow 2, especially, where it was just like different stories in one movie. And so, yeah, it's a really good film, and I definitely recommend it. Like, again, it's a anthology series, and the first movie is called The Box. It's a creepy tale about a young boy who sees something horrifying that changes his life. And after that, there's another one called, let me see here. I'm trying to read it here. It's called Don't Fall. It's about a group of campers who run afoul on a monster in the woods. And, and the last one's called Living Son. It's a story about a woman whose teenage son displays increasingly disturbing, violent behavior. So, yeah, it's just, three great different, stories in one movie. I don't know. Are you a fan of anthology series, Jace?
I do. I like anthologies. I like getting a lot of bang for my buck, a lot of small stories in one grand, like Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah.
Those are great.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, there's one that's playing now on Netflix that is the genesis of the James Wan universe, and it's The Conjuring. And if anybody's ever seen The Conjuring, I mean, if you haven't, you've been living under a rock, I guess, the last 20 years or 10 years that it's been out. And just a great film. It's about the Warrens and their, foray into the world of paranormal investigations, and about investigating this house that this family lives in. And it goes on, just whirlwind, and it sets up just a series of events for other films. I mean, they've branched this out into two different other series with now Annabelle and then now The Nun that just came out. So another group of, movies that came out of this one film and was able to build a big franchise. Did you see the original Conjuring, Jay?
I did not,
No.
because that shit's all kind. With the things I've seen in my life, I don't need my fantasy to parallel too much of reality. I figure if I keep a slightly closed door on that one, that's less of my life I'm going to have to worry about.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, but definitely a good series. If anybody has never checked it out, definitely I recommend they do that immediately. So, that was one of the last ones that I wanted to bring up. Let me see. I think there was one more on the list here. And let's see here. Yes, I think there was. Yeah, it was, let's see, Oculus. And Oculus was a movie that takes place in where this lady stayed at this mental hospital, and she's kind of like going through this whole thing of emotions, and she kind of puts her life behind her, and she believes that her parents' death were caused by an artifact that their father brought home, which is this antique mirror, and it just goes on to this crazy just whirlwind of just false reality. She sees things in the mirror that are actually not there, and it's just the mirror is cursed, and it's just a really, really screwed up movie.
Seems it. I've actually seen a lot of advertisements for that one. Yeah, that one looks scary and thrill things.
To say the least, right?
Yeah. There was something I was going to try to add in there to thrill to make it like more enticing, but thrilling is the best I could come up with, apparently.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. And the last one I wanted to bring up for the night was the quintessential classic, The Lost Boys. And, of course...
Oh, that's a classic.
Yeah, that's a classic, of course, with Kiefer Sutherland. I mean, you had Corey Haim. You had just a slew of just, characters and actors that, are legendary in Hollywood. I mean... If you haven't seen this, again, you have not seen a good horror movie from the 80s. I mean, this is the quintessential horror vampire movie of the 80s, and there hasn't been one since like that. You have all these other knockoffs.
Yeah, you're never going to be able to recapture that lightning in a bottle. I mean, that was the 80s vampire horror quintessential. Like, that led all the other, like Bram Stoker's Dracula and things of that nature that were, but nothing touches Lost Boys.
Yeah, nothing, definitely nothing. Yeah, and again, nothing. I can't say enough about this movie. If you haven't seen it, just take an hour and 45 minutes of your life and watch a decent horror movie. That's the one. So, again, that's the movies this month on Netflix that you can find that are streaming this month. Check those out. And last thing I wanted to review, Jay, was this movie I was telling you about that I watched the other day called Extinction, and it stars Michael Pena. You might remember him from Shooter. He was the FBI agent who ended up helping Mark Wahlberg at the end of that movie. And he was also in he was in the Ant-Man movie as well. He's had a couple of really good roles as of late. Now he had his own Netflix original movie called Extinction, and it's about this guy who starts to have like these recurring nightmares of like an alien invasion happening. And it's kind of to the point where it's kind of impeding on his family structure because it's to the point where they think he's paranoid. His wife wants him to see a doctor, and there's kind of like reluctance for him to go see a doctor because he doesn't want to think he's crazy or anything like that. But he kind of finally bites down on the bullet one day and decides, hey, listen, I'm going to go see a doctor, right? So he goes to this doctor, and he kind of starts to see things that are not kosher. Just let me say that way. I don't even know how else to say it, but just things aren't right. And he starts to notice it and ends up not staying for the appointment. And he ends up telling his wife he didn't stay for the appointment. Of course, ends up being a big, brouhaha because of that. But anyways, long story short, an alien invasion actually starts to happen. And so, his wife...
I've been like, told you so, bitch.
Yeah, exactly. I probably said that like 3 or 4 times throughout the film. And so, yeah, the invasion actually happens, but there's a super, super twist. I'm not going to give it away. You guys have to watch it. I'm telling you, it is not going to, disappoint you. Just watch the film. Take some time. Go watch this sci-fi thriller, because that's what it is. It's sci-fi thriller. But it's good. It kind of starts off a little slow because Michael Pena is kind of like this, individual who's conflicted with this, thing that's going on with him at that moment. But take the time, dedicate it. Don't worry, write it out because it's going to be worth the payoff at the end. So give a pretty big thumbs up for Extinction there. So, well, that's it for my blabbering for the evening. Jay, we came to talk about Brother 12, and you brought this up to me last week, and Come, I mean, tell me, where did you even find this? I mean, where did this all come from?
So when my wife Rachel and I went on vacation a couple weeks ago, probably about a month ago at this point, um, we're in the hotel room with the kids, trying to find something that we can all watch. It was Shark Week, and I come across the Travel Channel, and on the Travel Channel is the show called Expedition Unknown.
You love that.
And
That's
this guy,
Josh Gates, right?
yes,
Yeah, it's a great show.
it's a great show. So we got so into what they were doing in this particular episode. When we got home, a lot of our shows were on break. We're catching up, or we're caught up with Rex, as we were talking about earlier. So we had to have something as a filler. So we've been going back watching older episodes of Expedition Unknown. Older episodes. There's like 2 seasons, but they do something on Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Yeah, I saw that.
He goes into Egypt and all the queens of Egypt, and there's all these great places he goes and mysteries he's trying to solve, including just recently. I'm not sure if you heard that one of the 3 original pairs of ruby slippers from Wizard of Oz had been missing for about 15 years. So he went to Minnesota, where the 3rd pair had been stolen.
Ah, they were stolen. Okay.
There's one is in the Smithsonian, another pair is in a private collection in somewhere in California, and the 3rd pair was on display in a small museum in the hometown of Judy Garland.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. But somebody had come in. All they took was the shoes. They broke in, took nothing but the shoes. And it turns out that whoever it was, originally they were told they were put in a paint can and thrown into a lake of some sort, which in Minnesota in the winter, it's hard to get into a lake.
Okay, yeah, of course.
So they ended up checking it out, and what they couldn't actually find the shoes. About 2 weeks ago, the shoes were found in a lake in a paint can. So they were on the right track. Pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, I love that show, and I love the the main guy in it. And so you were watching the show, and so how did Brother 12 fit into all this?
So one of the episodes was on this Brother 12. So as we're sitting here watching, we start watching it, and he's talking about how they're going to go to Canada. He talks about this Brother 12 who had a fairly unremarkable life until he fell ill, and then started seeing visions. And then beyond that, he ended up forming a cult, and some. We're going to get into some of the things that unfolded later.
Right.
But he said he was actually going to go to the island. Most people in Canada don't go to this island. It's almost completely. In fact, it's completely abandoned.
Yeah, that's what I read. Yeah.
So as they're on the ferry heading out, and again, it's like 10:30 at night. I'm half awake. I'm half asleep. It's usually kind of what I thought we watch when we want to go to bed.
Yeah.
This Canadian is like, "Where are you guys going?" So he says that they're going to go, out to this particular island in search of more information on Brother 12. And this Canadian, who was probably in his 20s, maybe 30s, was so afraid. He warned Josh Yates to be careful. He said, "You don't know what's out there. You don't want to mess with anything out there. You just want to stay away from it." Because if I was you, I wouldn't go anywhere near that island.
Yeah.
So this guy has instilled so much fear that people won't even go to the island.
Yeah, that's what I saw, and it's an interesting story. As soon as you mentioned it, I started Googling it automatically, and I was really intrigued to find out a lot of this, the story, how it kind of unfolded, and not just how it unfolded, how this guy was able to get away with so much stuff. I mean, I know it was like the mid 1800s, and the guy was ahead of his time as far as being able to get away from the police and being prosecuted. He was smart enough to know what to do. I mean, this guy, as crazy as he was very smart too at the same time. So, that's one thing about this guy that I give him credit for is as crazy as he was super smart and he was able to convince a lot of people into
I don't
his craziness.
I don't know if he was crazy. I mean, he was definitely crazy. But the thing that really sets him apart from any other cult figure I've ever heard of, right? A lot of these cult leaders, they talk about speaking of the divine or speaking for the divine or speaking on the divine. But he's the only one. He said he was so he's sick in the south of France. He starts having visions, and this is when he starts referring to himself as Brother 12, as if he's the 12th disciple of wisdom from Great Egypt. He eventually says that he is the Egyptian god Horus, if I remember that correctly.
Yeah, Cyrus.
Osiris, excuse me. Reincarnate. And the thing that really captured me and when it made me start kind of looking into this dude is he ends up misappropriating funds and being taken to court.
Yeah.
These misappropriated funds.
Yeah, that's how kind of things went downhill for him a little bit almost.
Oh, well, almost.
Almost. But let's put the brakes on that.
You know what happened?
Oh, I do.
Okay.
I do. But let's put the brakes
Spoiler
on that. There is a little bit of a spoiler, but I wanted to kind of rewind a little bit here on that because I wanted to go back to the beginning. His name was Edward Arthur Wilson. That's actually his real name. And he was born, I guess, March 19th or March 23rd, 1931 or something like that. Or I don't know when it was. I think he was born in the 1878. I'm sorry. And so he changed his name like 3 times. He ended up being like Emil de Valdez at the end. So anyways, that's how he was able to kind of like skirt through all this stuff at the same time. But he was born in in the UK, and it was just an intriguing way that he was brought up because he was brought up in a really, strict Catholic type religion. Yeah.
Big time religious.
Yeah. And it was like super, super like, strict, very, orthodox, not a lot of wiggle room. And a lot of people, described him as having like the brilliance of L. Ron Hubbard and then having like the destructiveness of Jim Jones with like the hypnotic hold of Rasputin. That's like how they would like explain like how they would describe him. This is how good this guy was. As
far as cult leaders go, he is definitely the most unique and intriguing of all cult leaders. Like I said, I've heard of. You go from he was fairly unremarkable in his life until he fell ill in the south of France. I mean, that's when really things start going. I don't know. Can't really say awry, but that's where things start getting interesting for sure.
Yeah, that's where things started getting interesting. So let's go back to where he was going on trial for misappropriating funds, and that's kind of how the catalyst kind of him, the legend grew a little bit more because of what transpired. And go ahead, Jay, explain to everyone like exactly what happened during that whole Inquisition and that whole trial. I mean, it was a very interesting outcome and series of events that happened during that time.
So he's in court, and the prosecuting lawyer is laying down his opening arguments, just his opening arguments.
Right.
And all of his accusers are in the room, and the judge, and I want to say he was actually representing himself.
Right.
The prosecuting lawyer falls dead mid-sentence.
So the prosecuting attorney just dies.
Just dies.
So this is what kind of attributed a lot of this hearsay about his black magic and him being able to influence, people and outcomes and things to his favor.
But he gets better.
Yes.
Because the prosecutor wasn't the only one affected in that room.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, everybody in that room was affected. A lot of them felt ill. Some of them had moments of psychosis. The judge himself started growling and barking uncontrollably and could only get out the words "case dismissed" as he hammered the gavel, meaning that it was thrown out. It was thrown out of court.
Just thrown
And
out.
the only person in the entire room that wasn't affected was Brother 12.
So Brother 12 was the only one not affected. And just to give a little bit more backstory on this guy, so Jay's going forward, I'm going backwards. So this is like a little bit of a tag team. And this is good. No, so that way we can do this from both ends. So going back, he founded...
That's what she said.
he had founded the Aquarian Foundation, and it was also known as Cedar by the Sea.
Right. And that's the island that he got a lot of investors to pay for out there in Canada.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, he was able to, bring up this whole cult and, have his own version of, what he thought the Catholic type of religion should have been. And it's just a crazy way of how one person who is so smart and so convincing and so that has that power to, manipulate other people with just words. It's quite amazing to me. It's really amazing, and it's amazing that there are people like that on this earth. And it's amazing that this guy was able to garner so many followers, but things didn't end up real well for him at the end there, Jay, right?
Yeah, I think the thing that's craziest is actually the biggest investor he had eventually ended up on his island being tortured and worked to the bone.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then what happened to him? What was what the catalyst you said was him falling ill? And then what happened at that point?
He fell ill, supposedly. He had fallen ill, and they say he died, but they ended up seeing him a few years later all over the place.
Yeah, which is crazy. That's what I read too. That he supposedly died, and part of the reason why he kind of defected from everybody is because people were coming up to him and saying like, "Why are you being so rough to us and working us to the bone when you're just like sitting here going mad and going crazy and telling us what to do, and you're reaping all the rewards, and we're like." What's the issue here? So they kind of revolted, and they kind of he banished them out, but then he banished them out back to the original temple that he built, which was that Aquarian Foundation. And so they ended up coming out with their own version of the religion without him. And then that's when he took off, like you said, and faked his own death, because supposedly 2-3 years later they saw him again, I think in England. Was that right?
Yep, that is correct. And here's the other thing about it. A lot of the money that investors gave to him, he would turn into gold medallions.
Ah.
And buried them. Supposedly it was 46 mason jars filled to the brim with these gold coins that he buried somewhere on that island. And this is what they're going to investigate on Expedition Unknown, and try to see if they could find them and dig them up.
Uh-huh.
And they found the remnants of a jar, but no actual gold coin in it. So he could have gone back to that island anytime he wanted, dug those things up, had all the money he needed to go ahead and survive. Him and his Madame Z, which was his main woman, his mistress.
Right.
And she was more the physical labor taskmaster than he was. Like, she would beat them mercilessly. And she took out a lot of her frustrations because obviously him and her were an item. But one of the things that started to take down his Aquarium Foundation is he actually had a lot of the women's dorms. They had dormitories on this island, and he would go in and choose a different girl every night to sleep with.
Why is it always the cult leaders who ended up doing that?
same reason why anybody does anything, dude. It's to get laid.
No, it's always the cult leaders. If you always hear cult leaders, it always ends up them fucking every woman in the fucking cult. You know what I mean? And
Because what's more, if you're building a cult
yeah,
and you're becoming that person that you want people to follow you and believe in you, and you have power over them and all that. What's more a symbol of having power over someone than either A, making a woman relinquish herself to you, or B, making a man allow his wife to be relinquished to you? I mean, come on. That right there is, that's classic shit talking in sports. How's your wife and my kids? Come on.
oh yeah, that's pretty rough. That's pretty rough. Yeah, and it's always that. I always find that amusing because it always ends up that cult leader being the guy who ends up fucking all the women, and it's just always that same box, that same cookie cutter box that it always fits, and it's weird. The whole idea of a cult is weird to me. I can understand it in some aspects, maybe a group of people going through a traumatic event together. And so they need to maybe form a group, but you wouldn't call that a cult, I guess. But you have these people who come together with these weird, thoughts of mind, and sometimes when you have more people together, it kind of perpetuates the insanity of the whole premise of what they believe in. And it's crazy to me that it's still to this day, the cults are still around. I mean, you see it every day. You always hear of these
Well,
weird religions that pop up.
you
here and
end
there.
up. Here's the thing: as humanity, as a species, as you know, as an animal, whatever you want to call it. Ultimately, what we're doing is we're even going back to the caveman days. We're trying to build a sense of community that allows us safety, prosperity, and can grow in a safer environment. I mean, communication started because these caveman groups were trying to get together and understand one another better so they could form better alliances. They could help one another out with hunting and gathering and food and I mean even widening the gene pool. There's all these things that are benefits from it. So cults on the forefront seem like great ideas. You have a bunch of like-minded people who are looking for the betterment of man. We really want to try to help rid the world of some evils and be good shining examples of how we can do it. But at the end of the day, the people who run them are the issue. It's not the cult itself. I mean, John Jones' cult had a great idea. It was great. Go get some untendered land out in the middle of Latin America and allow people to grow spiritual but you end up whacked up on all kinds of acid and drugs and again banging all kinds of chicks and taking all kinds of money and eventually had to kill himself.
Yeah, don't drink the juice, right?
Don't drink the juice.
Don't drink the juice, man. That was horrible, man.
Never drink the juice.
What a horrible scene. I mean, I remember seeing the documentary on that and just seeing that aerial footage of all those people just laying there in that field like that.
Dead.
Man, just dead. And you're just sitting there looking at it. You're just like, I can't believe that's like real life. Like, you see something in a movie, you're like, oh, okay, at the end of the day, you always know it's a movie, right? You can see somebody get chopped up. You can see somebody's brains get blown off, the top of their head. And no problem. It's a movie at the end of the day. But if that moment when it's a real thing, man, and just seeing that aerial footage of the helicopter just going around the camp and all those bodies, little kids, grown people, white people, black people, Spanish
that's
people.
What got me most, man.
Yeah, that's the fucked up part.
There were kids there that had no idea. A, they didn't know the danger they were in. B, they didn't know anything else. Like, that was the only world they'd grown up in. There was kids there that they couldn't fend for themselves, and their parents put them in that position.
And it's a sad position that, they did put them in. And it's just, again, a very sad, event that happened in, the United States. Unfortunately, it didn't happen in the United States. It happened in Ghana, where Jonestown was founded. But it all started here. It all started here. They moved to
All
Ghana to
started
get
here.
away, to get away from, because they couldn't get away with their craziness here in the United States, so they had to go to Ghana and, go there and do that there. So, yeah, just a amazing story. Yeah, Brother 12, man. I mean, just I've never heard of another individual that was able to do this, I guess, at this level prior to him. I guess he is the first one, and everybody else, basically copied from his book when it comes to becoming a cult leader. And just a really interesting story, Jay. And I really appreciate you bringing it up for us to discuss tonight and, talk about cult leaders and stuff like that. I was actually in Los Angeles, and I know we were talking about doing this episode, and the first person I thought of when I landed in Los Angeles was Charlie Manson, man.
Hmm.
This first guy that popped into my head. I was like, man, a guy that actually never killed anybody, but just had the
Yeah.
mental power over, what, four other individuals to carry out this heinous crime against this woman who was pregnant in her home. I mean, just another horrifying, story. If you don't know the story behind it, I definitely urge you to guys go check it out. Very gruesome and just horrifying story. But he never actually did anything physically himself. He never
Nope.
pulled a trigger. He never stabbed anybody. He didn't do anything. He just directed. And his direction alone, he was just so powerful that he was able to,
And life in prison.
and life in prison. And it's amazing, amazing, amazing. And, passed away last year and finally in prison. So, anyways, well, listen, thanks for, bringing the subject up, Jay. I'm sure we're going to be bringing up another cult leader here sometime pretty soon. And, oh,
There's a
listen,
bunch of them.
also another documentary on Netflix when it's completely related to this. It's called Wild Wild Country, and it's about this cult leader in Oregon. You got to check it out. I'm not even going to give any more away, but it's called Wild Wild Country. It's fantastic. It's a little bit slow at the beginning, but sit through it. It's fucking worth it. It's a crazy story.
All Wild Country.
Yeah, check it out. It's called Wild Wild Country on Netflix. So I know you were talking about a movie that you saw not too long ago, Jay, and that you wanted to recommend too, right?
Well, it wasn't a movie. Normally when we do these, you have to what to watch in the Dick of the Week. But I was saying that because I got this Brother 12 off this show, Expedition Unknown, and he does so many other cool things. Like he goes to Stonehenge, and there's so many amazing things he does, and there's so many amazing things that you learn. And there's such cool stories. Like how about there's an Egyptian queen who ended up her existence is almost erased from all of history. Turns out it was King Tut's like stepmom.
Yeah.
I mean, just there's so many crazy shit that you see and hear and the stuff that they do. It's a great show. It's called Expedition Unknown on the Travel Channel. I highly recommend it. If you're looking for something thoroughly entertaining and a bit educational, shut the front door. That's a great show.
Yeah, it is actually educational. You learn things that you've never were taught in books in high school. And the host Josh Gates he has a very dry kind of sense of humor, but
Yeah.
it gets over it gets over it. After a while it kind of grows on you. But a great host, a great show, and yeah, definitely recommend it as well. So, well, Jay, listen, that's it for Dark Fringe Radio for this week for us, man. It's episode 40. We've done 40 of these
Jeez.
things, man. Can you believe that?
Crazy.
Crazy, absolutely nuts. Yeah, 40 episodes, and we're not going to stop. We're going to continue to give you a new podcast every week. We're going to be more diligent and make sure we get an episode for you guys every week. So please bear with us. We're getting our bearings in working order. There's going to be changes to the show, so constantly working and trying to evolve this show for you guys to make it better at the end of the day for you guys. So again, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Dark Fringe Radio. Please make sure you follow us there, like, subscribe to all our stuff. We're doing stuff every day, especially Instagram. That's probably the one that I'm dropping new information constantly on a daily basis, 6 to 7 different things at least a day. And also Twitter and Facebook, please help us out there as well. I'd tremendously appreciate it. Again, how to listen to the podcast. Again, you can listen to us on iTunes, also Google Music or Play, and SoundCloud. Also, we're available on FM Player if that's something that you guys use as far as a podcast platform. A lot of people that I know use it. I use it myself because I like a lot of different range of different podcasts, and it usually covers the full range of what I like there as well. So, anything else for you, Jay, for the night?
That's it for me. Please keep supporting us. We appreciate it. Any comments or anything you'd like to hear or see us cover, or even other things you'd like to hear us do on the show, maybe other opportunities, other ideas that you'd like to hear Will, I, or Gab talk about, send them over to us. We are open for everything. We are here trying to give you the best experience and amount of content that we can do.
Absolutely. And you can send all that information again to remind everybody to thedarkfringe@gmail.com. Again, that's thedarkfringe@gmail.com. Again, I'm Will Martinez for Jay Galosi, This Week Dark Fringe Radio. Thanks for coming on the podcast, everybody, and I hope you have a good night.